the important job.
We don't have the pledge listed here, but I think we ought to do
We
it.
do that, yeah.
Good evening and welcome to the Board of Selectmen meeting for Monday, June 4th, 2018. This is a special meeting devoted to two topics. Our proposed agenda is at 6:30, starting at 6:30, the Selectmen's fiscal year 2019 preliminary goal-setting exercise, also followed by discussion of the Selectmen's annual review of policies and regulations, or policies and procedures, as it's sometimes noted. I see it both ways. Before we begin, if I might ask our clerk to lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Well, there's a couple of ways of going about this. The agenda shows that we have the goal-setting exercise first, and policies and regulations after it. I don't have any problem with that, if anyone else doesn't. I'm guessing on both topics, we're going to need a couple of nights to get through each of them. We have submitted, or at least a number of members have submitted updated goal topics. Mine are exactly as they were before. If I'm able to make more progress on those in the next years from last year, I'll be more than happy. What I might do in that segment is ask Keith to set things up by reviewing where we've been. He has a matrix, and then we can go through individual members' proposals for the goal statements where we get to the policies and regulations. What I'm proposing is arduous. It is kind of going through section by section. I know, at least in offside conversation or hearing from other members, that, as with myself, there's a number of topics that I may not have a proposed change for, but just I'm looking for some explanation of what it means and what the history of it is. So that's how I would like to handle things. And if you have topics for the specific topics for changes in the policies or regulations, or new topics to be covered in there, then I guess we could either address them at the beginning of that, going around through each of the selectmen, or just bring them up as they come up in the course of the table of contents. So unless anyone has any other suggestions, that's how I would propose to handle those two discussions.
Sounds good.
Sounds good.
All right, and also, we could, I would think it's probably also not a bad idea to kind of set a timeline on each of these topics for tonight's purposes. Otherwise, we could go very late, and I did promise Chase that he would have an opportunity to have input too. So why don't we try to set a goal of about half hour, 45 minutes on the first one, and if it seems to be going longer than that, then we just realize we get grist for discussion on another day, and then I would imagine it'll take at least an hour, hour and a half, just given the length of the document for the next one, and try to stick to that. So if we're, if it's about 7 or 7:15, and we've got a ways to go on the goal setting, I'll suggest we maybe table that topic and move on, and resume that discussion on another day. If we're close to wrapping up, then maybe we can just finish that, and then move on to the regulations, and again, try to give that about an hour plus time, but not go into the wee hours. Does that sound reasonable?
Sounds good.
Okay, great. Then, Keith, why don't we have you set up the goal exercise for us?
Sure. What I've done is, and I've got up on the screen here, the matrix that's in your packet, which with the column on the left is the current, does it show behind me? Shows the, I'll make it bigger here, shows the current goals, and lists who was the champion and what the status was. And then the next column over is proposed goals for fiscal 2019. And just as a guide in all cases, bringing forward your goals from last year and then expanding them if it looked like the way we spent this year served to do that. So just on the first one is a rather consolidated goal, master plan implementation, housing, open space, and green communities. And considering some of the green communities activities also involved sustainability and the sustainability committees, municipal, the MVP program, municipal vulnerability preparedness, and there's some significant grant money involved in that next year. Maybe we ought to add sustainability to the green communities as part of that. But just running through here, on implementing the master plan, your goal was to support the master plan implementation committee. And some of the specific things that happened in the last year were actually the award of the award of funding. First, this was town meeting funding for the implementation committee's Littleton Common revitalization plan and zoning study, and that was augmented by state grant funds. And as Mike's group is even now mobilizing with their consultant, Fort Point Associates, who will be getting quite busy later this month and into the summer. There's going to be an awful lot that comes out of that. I should also mention at the sewer team meetings, we've recognized that this is at the Littleton Common smart sewer team meetings, that this master plan project is a very significant one for us to be, that team to be coordinating with, so that we don't have, so that we're not at cross purposes if our consultants are going out and talking to folks. And I think our hope from the last sewer meeting is that you guys would take the lead, that
We actually, immediately following our meeting, if I might jump in here, Keith, just because it segues with what you were saying.
Yeah.
We did a phone call last Friday, right after our end, and that was with the Fort Point consultants, and it was basically on the topic of integrating the common area rezoning with the sewer proposal, to the extent that we will, Keith said not be at cross purposes, but beyond that, try to augment each other and make sure that, rather than having two different groups visit the same property owners with two different sets of questions, we have a joint effort going out there on that effort. So that, I think, an integration with the sewer project is pretty much accepted as part of the common area goal. The other thing I would add, it's not so far off, and I'm glad Mike is half of our audience here tonight. He can correct me if I'm wrong, but it's close enough on our horizon, and some steps have already been taken by the planning board that I would say a review of the Taylor Street, Foster Street corridor as a second area of consideration after the common area, or maybe even concurrent with it at some point, is on the horizon enough that it should be noted, probably will be acted on this year. And I note, Joe, that you actually mentioned some topics that relate to that too in your own proposals for the depot area.
Well, the depot area and the same area that we just talked about, we've seen to put that in the back burner. The depot area we can go into later on. That's a case that maybe a rezoning or say paying a little bit more attention to that one area, but when we get to that topic, we can.
Okay, yep.
right. So, and from the sewer team's perspective, the work that the master plan group is working on for, like, what's the economic development that might result from a different vision or from things that individual property owners, that's key information to be able to have to quantify the, especially as we go after state grants for the sewer. The more we can quantify, this property owner, this business intends to expand and, beyond what they can do with just Title V in a certain way. So that's very, very timely information. I put in this I lumped under the same category of implementing the plan, the improve, this is a suggestion from Joe, improve areas that are overlooked. We're looking at industrial, the depot area, the Porter Road Bridge, other things. So,
But both of those fall, or each of those falls into either, of the focus areas of the master plan committee, so I think they're absolutely
right.
in concert.
Yeah, there's parts of implementation. Now, we've got a separate section in here called economic development,
Right.
which is where the other project that, I think that's where we put we got a grant for, just jump ahead there. No, maybe it's not. Yeah, while the master plan committee had submitted for mass development assistance for the Taylor Foster commuter rail area, in fact, it ended up being the Planning for Housing Choice grant that we were able to get for that area, but that'll be an important planning exercise. Okay, so that takes us to housing.
Oh, but by the way, this goals worksheet, this is from, that's you, that's you,
That's
Chuck,
Chuck.
okay.
Yeah.
All right. If we cover an area where one of your topics should be in there, just
Right.
jump in. Cindy's, yours are already integrated? Cindy's
No,
in?
mine are, well, actually, I did share some with Keith, but I actually updated mine.
Okay,
And
well, then
I
I'd
brought
make
a
that
hard
general
copy.
for the, okay, pass it out if you would, and I'll leave it to the individual members. If you've got a specific item that falls into one of these categories,
Right.
jump in.
Yeah, I'll be able to put, take this, I've got a revised
Anthony, get a copy of that?
matrix.
Thank you.
I have a revised matrix which added
Yeah.
the couple of ones from Cindy over the weekend.
Right, and I gave it some more thought today.
Okay. All right, so anything else then on master plan implementation?
Or as you have it written here, actually, Keith, housing, open space, and green
Yeah,
communities as
actually,
well.
yeah, I was
So,
gonna
right,
go, I was gonna go next to the housing
Yeah.
part, the housing subsection implement.
Oh, okay, you do have that there, I'm sorry, I apologize.
Housing goals.
Yeah, yeah,
And above 10%. Things that we've done already, and it was a lot in the last year, the inclusionary zoning, senior residential development, establishing the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, getting housing choice designation, and getting the grant award, $65,000 for under the Planning for Housing Production Program. Some things for the coming year that we'll want to do, we want to continue to focus on remaining above 10%, of course, the overriding goal. We'll want to apply for housing choice capital funds, which we will be eligible to apply for as a certified housing choice community. The amount of money that's available has not been set yet. I'm not clear if the $1.8 billion housing bond issue that was signed by the governor last week includes this funding source, or whether it needs another one. But in any event, as soon as the state issues its guidelines on the housing choice capital fund program, we ought to jump at that to see what we can do. Preliminarily, we thought we may be able to go after some infrastructure funds, maybe for the sewer, maybe for something else, but we should definitely try to go after that money that we apply for, that we qualify for. Another thing would be the implementation of the master plan committee's planning for housing production project around the, focusing around the area around the commuter rail station. I think the sales point there was that it was in the master plan, that neighborhood's in the master plan, and that any transit-oriented development that might occur would score very highly with future, Mass Works grants and other things. Mass Housing is the funding agency. They are, we don't get cash from them. The award is $65,000, turns out. What we get is a consultant that Mass Housing pays for, and the consultant that they're going to give us is Judy Barrett, who is who wrote a master plan and who wrote all the housing zoning bylaws, so that we won't have to spend a lot of those resources to bring her up to speed. In fact, she was in the office today, meeting with Mara, and just to.
That's
sort of
like a done
scope
deal,
out.
we don't have any say in that?
No, it's, no, and unless we wanted to say no to Judy and pick some other one, but they are selecting the consultant. And if there's objection to Judy, we can ask for somebody else, but I would hope we would.
I just asked the
I would hope
question,
we
that's all.
wouldn't, yeah, so. No, it's, in that case, it's not, we don't, that they select the consultant and perform matchmaker with us. So if we're okay, I will say, if we're okay.
But we've already
with
speed
Judy.
dated with the,
I-
Yeah,
I thought the planning board mentioned at one of their meetings that they were going forward with a consultant for the Taylor Street, Foster Street area.
this is
That they had-
different, this is the housing, right?
this is
Right, but this
housing.
is in relation, you were talking about a consultant for the housing piece of that.
Yeah.
But I thought the planning board had already decided that they were going to retain a consultant to look at the Taylor Street, Foster Street area from the economic development point of view. Would that be,
We've applied for money, right? That's a,
Well, that's
Yeah.
the, you had applied for mass development funding that you didn't get.
Well, actually. what
Unless you've
happened-
applied for something else I don't know
Excuse
about.
me.
Yeah,
Mr.
sure,
Chairman,
Mr. Zeldin, yeah.
Owen Street. The application was actually prepared jointly by the planning board and our committee.
okay,
And it refers specifically to housing, transportation, both, for that area. And at the time, it was not realized about the restriction on who or could not be the consultant for it. So more than likely, I can't speak for the planning board, it was my impression that the consultant would be someone chosen, as it were, on the basis of merit and response to the proposal. And so we had narrowed, we had a pretty good idea of who the consultants might be. And there were 2 or 3 of them who were very familiar with the town of Littleton, so, in that area.
so your update, Keith, is it's more specific than that, it's Judy.
It's that they had someone in mind for us, and unless we wanted to reject that
and
person.
it's related to
then-
housing.
Was the Harrison Group also on the list of possible groups?
I have no idea. Who else? Greg Watson from the funding agency only had mentioned one name.
Would Maren have any more information on that?
She might, but she had the same phone call, so I'd say she would
Okay.
get the same information, but.
Well, I guess we'd probably appreciate
Yeah.
an update on that, but in any event, the topic remains a goal here, whether, whoever we end up with, the consultant. Seeing that this area, Keith, if you don't mind, rather than you summarizing Joe's suggestions while he's sitting right
Sure.
next to you, since
Hey.
Joe, Cindy, and Chuck all have input.
absolutely.
Maybe, Joe, if you want to speak to whatever parts of your,
My voice thanks you.
yeah, saves you a little bit too. You can get a glass of water while you're waiting. On the whole, that general topic area, Joe, you had a couple of relevant points. You want to add anything on the housing?
No, I put down something that probably can never happen, but it seems like as time goes on and the price of land goes up and the price of houses go up, that there's a whole section of our town who make a decent salary but can't afford an affordable house, and I don't know how to do it. I'd like to say, wouldn't it be nice if we could have houses that policemen and firemen and town workers and other workers that work in different kinds of things could afford a house between $350 and $400 or something in that price range. Right now, it's not happening in the town. And even with the careful planning that we did in our last zoning, still doesn't enter into that thing. And I'm not sure we can solve that problem, but we are leaving out.
I will offer this, just from past experience to wrestling with that problem 20 years ago, with, by the way, a gentleman who just passed away last month, John Massapeake, one of the longtime great housing advocates in Littleton. He was on the Housing Authority for many years, and a super nice guy. But if we just simply rely on what's in the law, and what's available to us, the developers properly are going to do what makes them the most money. If that doesn't address the market needs, I think the towns that do it proactively get engaged in it either by acquiring or providing the land and doing an RFP to go into a development agreement with the developer. And that's a whole new realm we haven't got into, but Keith, isn't that kind of, a way we could, if the town wanted to do it, it would have to be as proactive as that.
But if the town did something like that, which is, I think is a great idea, if you can come up with the finances to do it and to set in policy, would you then be writing some kind of a bylaw that would say people within this,
Deeds, it'd be on the deeds.
Well, yeah, that there can be the issue would be local preference. If we're dealing with, well, let's see, because the answer I was going to give has to do with units that are countable on the subsidized housing inventory, which it may or may not be.
Even if you were
But
outside
even
of
if
that,
it
and the
were-
town owned the land or controlled it, and said, look, here's an RFP, if a developer's interested in getting involved in this, and you can make money, developing the following project, where we do X number of units on this land,
Yeah.
and they get perpetually,
Even from the standpoint of an SHI, that you can have up to a 70% local preference, with local being defined as people who live and work in your community. So it's possible to have housing constructed, and then to limit when you go to the lottery, to sell them or fill them if it's rental. You can discriminate or be discriminating, I will say.
based on the
with
level of the
local
town's
choice-
participation,
With the
right?
local choice of up to 70%. Yeah, part of it has to do with, it could be a sliding scale of.
Based on how much
If
we-
you put if you put a lot of money down, if the
Right.
town, say, purchased the property and then flipped it to a developer who you helped get outside grants, and there are, it's like, continue to be impressed by the funding, the financing that Town of Carlisle did with their 26-unit, the Benfield Farms.
Do we
That
know anybody over
with
there?
minimal, I don't know, it was under $1 million that the town through the CPA contributed to that project.
I think the housing production plan had some suggestions in it, and I think you can use CPC funds from the housing bucket to buy a specific property as well and offset the cost.
Yeah, you could,
Of the
and what's more, the
purchase on that.
CPC definition of community housing is 100% of median income, not 80% or 60%, which is like the, affordable subsidized housing. But you could use CPA funds for a housing project that is 100% of area median income,
Right.
which gets to a,
Looking at it on a
That's to a-
smaller scale instead of a whole development, you can look for individual properties, I
Well,
believe.
following up on this, there are housing goals consistent with this in the master plan, and the planning board obviously has to be a driving factor in any of this, but if it's more in the construction, if it involves more than just regulation and it involves construction, we need to be involved with it as well.
Yeah.
Did you want to say something, Michael?
I just want to ask the question, so we don't go lurching off the,
Yeah.
we don't go lurching in one direction, and maybe Joe has knowledge of this, but one of the barriers to variety of housing in town is that we don't permit multi-level housing. In other words, we stop at one level and the most two. We've never hit three. We have a very shortage of rentals as well as purchasable property. So what I'm asking is does your concept or approach include considering, I'll call it multi-level housing?
well, I hadn't thought about that. I think when it popped in my mind, it's been there for a while, is that I don't want to give townspeople the idea that I'm out there, or the board is out there looking for land to develop. I guess it was more of a comment that maybe that.
Blame me, I brought that part up.
No, but I mean, one of my other goals is to talk about how to preserve land, but I guess what I'm trying to say is that if a piece of land does become available and it's going to be developed, maybe there's an avenue we could take then, but not necessarily. I hadn't even thought about 3 stories, I hadn't thought about rentals, I was thinking about a certain price, a certain range of income that people have that really have to look outside of town, because now we're building $600,000 and $700,000 houses.
Tell you, I didn't contribute anything in writing here, so I don't want to use up too much time here, but I do want to mention, we shouldn't have overlooked the obvious in that some of the revitalization possibilities at the Common, and I don't know, perhaps even on Taylor Street as well, Foster Street, would allow, at least in the common area especially, for reuses that could have, multi-use, so and sewage, absolutely, the current situation would not allow that to happen for, families to be moving in, but you could conceivably have retail on the first level, office on the second, and or residential on the second, or whatever, and then that would be right in the wheelhouse of the people you're talking about.
Exactly. And,
That's why I asked.
And we're not knocking down trees to do it.
right, that'd be an answer, as far as I'm concerned, without people thinking we're going out there as, trying to pursue the purchase land they have to
Yeah,
develop.
getting into the development business.
Yeah.
So, Michael, is it fair to say the MPIC would be discussing housing sometime in the next,
It's already on the agenda along with the other favorite topic that seems to run against it, but it's not. It's what you call open space.
Yeah.
We treat it a little differently, but, it's okay.
Yeah. I always, those two can live in harmony if there's proactivity involved. But anyway, did either of you two in your suggestions have topics under that housing category, Cindy?
I did not.
Okay, Chuck?
Nothing beyond what we had already
Okay, good.
identified.
All right, Keith, do you want to get back? And I
Sure.
think we pick up at open space priorities?
Yep. That continues to be a goal, in the last year acquired where did it go? We acquired the Joyce Williams property, and we continue to get suggestions that we come up with some way to prioritize what the open space
Right.
priorities that we make. And could I just back up on
Sure,
the
sure.
housing? Just one last thing is that the establishment of the Affordable Housing Trust Fund and implementation of it is also going to be a critical thing for us to focus on. The bylaw passed, we need to populate it with some members. There's a representative from this board, Housing Authority. And that is where the money from the inclusionary zoning goes. If the property is, if the affordable units are not provided on site for less than 20 units, so you get around 80,000 a pop from each of the units that are not produced on site. So that, it could be some significant money going into the coffers. So just meant to
Okay.
mention that. So open space priorities and accessibility is the goal.
Yeah, I know we had the conversation with, who was it, the Open Space Committee, or was it CPC this year, about having them, a lot of overlap, same people, you get specific about what the criteria is, because otherwise, we're back in that old position of waiting for something to get proposed for development that you don't want to see developed, and
Right.
being reactive rather than proactive. And-
Right.
It even came up when we were talking about the transportation, when Gary LaCroix came in to propose that new committee,
Right.
linking different properties together and that kind of thing. So it's linked across a number of different organizations throughout the town.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I like to refer back to the open space and recreation plan that we
Yep,
created in
yep.
2009. There's some, I think, useful information in there. I think that's,
Updated in 2009, it's been around at least 20
Okay.
years earlier, no, I don't know.
so I had created in 2009,
Okay.
updated, excuse me,
Right,
Mr. Glady.
right.
So I just think it would be good to maybe review that report and the information in it and see what we can use as far as identifying parcels that are protected and unprotected. That might be a good starting point. To prioritize for open space. And the other thing that I had, we talked about briefly at one of our meetings was the land acquisition fund. I know we use CPA funds, but maybe this would be another means to save money for future large land purchases and look at how we
I
can.
just imagine, it. Did we actually create that fund this year? Did
It
we?
was already created.
It was already
Right,
created, it was
okay,
dormant
right,
for a while.
Right, that's right, yep.
Yeah.
We
But
took
we
some
talked
action on
about
this.
it.
Did we put some money in that, Keith, this year?
Well, we put money in the community preservation.
Okay, but not in the independent,
In
okay.
that
all
fund.
right.
Right.
We moved money from stabilization, we moved it into stabilization, then took it out and put it in the CBA fund.
Right.
This is as good a place as any to jump in and say this. We have gold champions left over from last year. I haven't lost sight of the fact that if we want to revisit that, we can.
Right.
Currently, these topics are both purview of Chase and I don't mind shuffling the deck of people, sometimes new eyes, it's a good thing. If people have interests, I'm happy to accommodate to the extent we can, moving things around so everybody gets a chance to take a whack at something they're interested in.
I think as far as assignments, we probably want to have all 5 of us here.
Yeah, right, I don't intend to do that tonight, but maybe after we go through everything, then we can do that. Anything else here? I know you mentioned the softball field too.
Right, that's just something, and I don't know where to begin or how to go about that, but I know the softball field needs help, it needs work. They have a severe drainage issue up there. The one thing that really bothers me about the softball field is the lack of accessibility for anybody handicapped or elderly. I remember when I coached youth, it was horrible to have other teams from out of town show up, and they stand at the gate, and they look at that field, and they're like, I can't get out there to watch my daughter or, grandchild play. So I did speak briefly with Mike Lynn about this, and I know it's a concern of his as well as many other people, so that's something I'd like to revisit.
When we had, when the high school field was redone last year, we moved money around in order to make sure that was taken care of, which needs to be revisited because of all the test holes. But that was the same consultant that told us what needed to be done.
Right.
Chris kind of seized the opportunity and had them give him an estimate of what it would cost to do it and do it right. Because
Okay.
it's never been done right.
Right.
And you almost can't play on that field in April, period.
Right,
So we've been fortunate to have Jet, so that the high school teams can go down there, and then the youth just kind of scatters across, whether it's out back here or over at Ken White.
Mm-hmm.
But the number that the consultant came up with, and it's a rough number, just kind of, back of the envelope kind of thing.
Right.
Was a $60,000 number.
Okay.
That is just to do the drainage and to basically take up that whole field, do the drainage properly, and then put it all back together again.
Mm-hmm.
That does not include, I definitely hear you about the walkway, being involved with the LIBS board for a number of years.
right,
There really should be a path that follows, it goes down kind of like behind the backstop of the baseball diamond. Now, it should continue up in back of the backstop, down the third base line on the baseball field, and end up on the first base line of the softball field. It should be a paved path, or at least a star pack, something that a wheelchair could be maneuvered, or a carriage, or a walker.
right.
Do we know whether this is on the radar screen for either Park and Rec or the schools? Have they?
I have mentioned it to Mike Fontanella.
Yeah.
So that's, it's been,
Yeah.
it's all a matter of where the money comes from, right?
Right.
It's,
Can I just bring a point, though? If money does get spent in the future, wouldn't some consideration be made to take a playing field that's used by high school students and put it in an area that is accessible to everybody? Because what Cindy's talking about, I talked to Cindy before, last summer, I went to watch the Twins play in a softball game. I walked up those stairs, and there's 25 stairs to get up there, with an older gentleman from another town.
Older than you?
It
wasn't even me.
I was huffing and puffing, but the gentleman got to the top of the stairs, looked all the way across the field and says, I can't make it. So he couldn't watch his grandkids play. And that
Right.
shouldn't happen. The location of that field should never have been put there. That should be a practice field for something.
Right.
And if they're gonna spend money, and probably not money to do it right now, it should be brought closer to the high school.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, if we looked at it's not really for us to look at, but I think if the town as a whole is looking at a bigger picture, potentially down the road, Indian Hill, if that became
Right.
part of the town's property,
Yeah.
there could be a different parking
What
situation.
are other options, and anyway?
Yeah, but-
Getting it on our radar now, getting it on our list is
Just
probably
to
a place.
understand that there's about a 60,000 or more
Probably.
nut
yeah.
that would
Right.
need to be included. And I think that if we had a contractor that was coming in to do the work on the field, it would be easier while they have the equipment there for them to cut
Package the
in
two of them,
the path, yeah.
Right.
I think, I believe so. Chris might be the better person to ask that
Well, we
question.
could have an opportunity with the sewer project, right? That field would
That's
all
true,
be
too.
Dug up, so at
Yeah,
that point, we
yeah, oh,
can really
good
align the
thinking,
field
yeah.
the right way, even with the baseball field, should,
Yeah.
be better in a corner than in the middle of the field too, so that's
Oh,
our
If we
opportunity.
could parlay that into, improve, using that as an opportunity to improve what's there, not just.
Not just throw it back together where it is,
Right,
but actually
right.
make sense of it.
Good
Yeah.
point.
There may be an opportunity to reconfigure the diamonds.
Mm.
Because of the use of alumni for the rectangular sports.
Hmm. Right.
The
The rectangular sports, okay, I get you.
rectangular fields, well, you know what
It's a
I mean.
new term, it's a Chuck term.
I like it, yeah, right, I mean, it's coined, yeah.
But those, I mean,
Is
there's
this being
not,
memorialized, Keith, somewhere?
Yes, up here. Oh, it's
All
all
right,
up
all
here.
right, all right, Anthony, maybe I should ask you, is this being memorialized somewhere?
he hasn't.
No, we're making good
followed-
progress here, I'd like to not see this be dropped, so, but I would like to move on. Okay, Chuck, you had some topics too, I see one particularly wonderful-looking idea, you want to address your open space-related topics?
The emerald necklace?
Oh, yeah, you got it, yeah.
Thought you'd enjoy that one. I just, in looking around, having the conversation about Cloverdale and looking at the chain of open space and trails that we have in town, we've got a lot of open space. We've got some great trustees that take care of it and a lot of volunteers that do a lot of work on keeping them up for us. With the Freeman Trail opening up in Acton and the state spending as much money as they did to make that connection over 119, it's beautiful. There's people out there all the time. I'd love to see some way, I'm not saying within the next 12 months, but just, again, on our radar, memorialize it, to start linking some of these trails. And I just have this vision now, living over on the Route 2 side of town. There's a gas line that runs kind of along Route 2, and if there would be any way to try to work with, I don't know if you can work with the gas company or
It's doable, it's, I
just
mean,
do something to connect the train to the Freeman Trail in Acton. I think it would be a huge asset for.
hey, it wasn't too many years
everybody.
ago when, I mean, right now, you can start at the Hartwell property and basically go to the Acton line through the Morrison property just on trails, so, what you're talking about is entirely doable, it takes work, but sure.
Yeah.
So we have to work with our Acton colleagues too.
Yeah, and they've identified on their goals,
Have
they
they?
lay out who is responsible for the trails. And
Yeah.
So I don't have them with me, but I do have that list.
I would bet, since the Freeman Trail touches both of their districts, that both, and it's been very active in the past year or two in Acton, that Senator Eldridge would probably be on top of that, and,
Yeah, they're both big champions.
Yeah.
Right.
Great.
That'd be great.
You had other topics in that general area range, Chuck? I see Green Community, I see, whatever, West Littleton Development. Where the heck is West
I
Littleton?
don't know, Cindy coined that
I did, it's
term.
West Littleton, West Acton, West Concord, West Littleton, Taylor Street.
Okay, all right,
One time it was West Littleton.
yeah, probably, yeah, was it?
The depot was West Littleton.
West Littleton? Okay.
Depot. So the depot and even down Taylor and Foster and, kind of the.
Okay, so the same area we
the
would-
forgotten corners.
Right.
Yeah.
Just to not forget about them, just to take a look at whether it's housing, or economic development.
By a variety of names, that has popped up in a lot of people's radar screens, so, yeah.
But as far as the green community stuff, I just looking for additional ways, whether it be zero waste or, just continue to, we've been very successful in getting grants and the schools have certainly benefited from our participation. Just, being mindful of what is out there and just kind of keeping our eyes and ears open and just collaborating with other communities. We hear that other communities have some successes. We read stuff in the broadcaster.
Yeah.
Just bring those to each other's attention as we come across those things and as we're talking to our colleagues in other communities.
Okay, good. The next item actually is recreational trails, so I think we, Keith, is there something there we should be thinking about that wasn't just mentioned in green communities as well? Do you want to summarize any?
Well, I thought it was useful, I mean, we didn't have specific action items under the recreational trails goal this year, but I thought that the landline project that MAPC is doing that pointed, as Chuck just said, that points to a way for Littleton to get involved and hooked up to other trails would be an important thing to do. I know that the work that, the Conservation Trust and others have been linking from the commuter rail station to, along Route 2 or to wherever.
Head towards the forest, yeah.
So,
Once upon a time in a younger body, I went all the way through systems of trail systems in western Mass or central New England, from basically Sunapee down to the Rhode Island border. You can go from there on everywhere. You can go to Mount Katahdin in one direction, as you know, Georgia in the other direction. But there's a lot of trails out there.
There are. We should do like a team building thing down the Appalachian.
Or
Good luck with
Oak
that.
Hill.
Have fun with
Or
it.
Oak Hill.
as of today, I figured out how to get from my house to work without a car, because I can ride my bike, which our property backs up to the Bruce Freeman Rail
Yeah.
Trail in West Concord, and go to Concord Center, get on, or Concord,
train.
West Concord Village, I should say, get on the train,
Yeah.
come 2 stations to Littleton Common and get on the shuttle,
And did you do
and
it?
get dropped
And just
off.
pull
I
the-
didn't do it
pull the
today
chain,
because it was
get
raining.
off.
It works in theory, Keith.
Well, it
right?
would have worked if I couldn't have gotten home tonight because the last shuttle just left, so.
Well, the guy I bought my house
But there'll
from,
be
he
other
used to ride
days.
his bike into Boston. He would
Yeah.
go down to, well, actually to Cambridge, go to Somerville, Cambridge, to Davis Square, hit all the bars. He'd bring his bike with him, and then he'd just hop on the train and take it back. So,
Yeah.
There you go.
So on
Kind of
a
the
day
other-
when I don't have evening meetings, and can catch that train that we just met, so.
So you blaming the home?
yeah, I bought it with a history. I knew what I was
With the
getting into.
property?
Yeah. Economic development, Keith, you want to move into that topic
Yeah,
area?
that was, let's see, last year we had develop economic development strategic plan, doing business in Littleton website, master plan economic development recommendations, and, oops.
I was about to say, if you haven't checked out the Economic Development Committee's video on the website, go ahead and do it. But then again, they're coming in on, what, the 25th, Keith? And I know he's Neil's intending to
Yeah.
preview that for us, too. It's a joint effort through a lot of people's input, and I think it sells the town well. Pretty good stuff.
Great.
Anyway, Keith?
So that was, let's see, did I lump? No, I don't have other, well, the master plan committee, as we said earlier, had
Coming
applied
on the
for
25th.
mass development funding that they didn't get. So I think we'd want to focus on I think we need to more clearly identify what our strategy is for.
Well, we've got them coming in on the 25th, and I don't want to spoil anybody, steal anyone's thunder, but there are a list of like 3 or 4 things that the committee is hoping to get involved in the next year, and just wants the board's blessing to do it. And it involves more marketing, it involves in targeting certain properties. Well, here I go, telling everything else. So anyway, wait till the 25th, but we should be able to put some meat on the bones on that.
Great.
Yeah. That's another topic area, by the way. I've been the representative for the past couple of years on the board, and I think it would benefit from having a new set of eyes and ideas on board this, so if anyone's interested. Anthony was nodding his head a little too quickly on that one.
No.
You talked about something else.
I know, I just wanted to catch you.
Shake it up a little bit.
Just trying to get-
Literally.
Okay. Did any of the board members have any economic development-related topics that fall more specifically than the general reference we just made?
Yeah, Joe had mentioned the update, an update from the,
Basically the same thing.
Yep.
The Taylor Street to the,
That's what Cindy had too, and Chuck, same thing. Everybody's on the same page there, so if we don't do something about that in the next year, then I don't know what that says about us. Okay.
meanwhile, the
Didn't hear that
economy is
much, or I
just,
wanna-
meanwhile, the economy is just humming along.
Right. Yeah, I guess we should just do like the president,
Whether
take
we have a
credit
plan
for
or
it, I
not,
suppose.
things keep happening, so, and
We could propose big tax cuts. We did do that, actually, we
Wasn't
did
I
do
on
that.
there?
It worked. No, we already did it. Yeah,
2 years in a row.
right, yeah.
that's right, you're applying, yeah, you're reducing your tax rate by, about 11%.
Mr. Zeldin, yes.
Been trying to track it down in relation to economic development. It looks as if state available funds for economic development per se don't seem to be, as shall we say, robustly either available or presented. It's all in connection or wrapped into
Housing.
It's not as jobs oriented, all right? And so I was wondering if you.
Well, it is, well, the metric for the state grant funds is jobs, but this year, the governor has indicated that an important part of the overall economic development approach is places for workers to live, as well as jobs for them to work at. So it's a, and also, and the other thing that scores very well is transportation-related projects. So if you have, I mean, I happen to think that if we came up with something really great, transit-oriented development around the commuter rail station, you could probably get a ton of
Right.
state money for it. But there's a whole process that will engage.
And we're hoping
engage
the sewer
community
too
about.
might have a lot
Yes.
of possibilities. So,
Yeah,
think-
if you can check the box with the
Right.
sewer, if you can check, if the sewer, I think the degree to which that you can check the housing box with the sewer helps.
has a direct impact,
Helps
yeah.
enhance the ability to get the big grant money.
all right. Well, speaking of which, the next two topic areas, Keith, are infrastructure needs and transportation. I'm gonna, and, all right, why don't you see if we can
Yeah,
go
on
through
it-
both of those and then
On
we'll.
infrastructure, we had three parts for last year: the sewer, water system, and stormwater. So with the sewer, I think we're all know where we're at there, although we do need to bring, the sewer team wants to come and brief the board on where things are, probably the first meeting in July.
Right.
Would work out, because we're just still doing some number crunching. We're still planning on submitting a MassWorks grant application in August and submitting a SRF, a state revolving fund loan application as well. There's no harm, no foul, that even if, as we're working to finalize what's the project, you can still submit the grant and go for the money. I will make the point, though, that as I said earlier, the more that we can identify specific job growth as a result of sewer, because this property owner wants to do something.
Our consultants can become very valuable to us if they can help us.
That's the key,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
And-
But the SRF is access to funds, it's not necessarily grants, we're just getting
Right.
lower costs.
Yeah, it's just
lower
a,
costs
it's a
that's a
loan.
borrowing,
It's a
yeah.
loan. It's a low-interest loan,
Right.
like. And as well as to get our legislators to, go after
Well, we've
line
hit,
item funding for us, so.
amongst the many of us at the table here, we've hit the various people want to direct me. Secretary Ash, I know incoming Senate President Spilka, she's heard my spiel, and you've talked to Ash, and Keith, you've talked to the Lieutenant Governor, I know, and
And we can all, whoever's here on 3 o'clock on Wednesday can talk to the governor. So he's here for the ribbon cutting
Oh,
at
right.
Mass.
is anyone going to be here? I don't, I'm not sure if I can.
What is it, Wednesday?
3 o'clock
3 o'clock.
Wednesday?
It's Governor Baker is doing a ribbon cutting at the Mass Ready Mix
Oh, the rail,
on,
yeah.
so that's, 80 Air Road.
That's hoping
Middlesex.
to get there.
Okay, good. Well, let's stay, make sure somebody can, I'm not sure. I thought I was going to be in the road
Put a beard
Wednesday.
on, you can be me. You can look a beard at the party store.
And Chuck, you could go complain to the governor about scheduling these things during working hours.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, anything else under water system infrastructure, transportation, Chuck?
On the water system,
Chuck. Keith?
yeah, on the, it says, because it says Chuck next to water system.
Right, I did see that.
That, I think it would be,
holiday system.
isn't it amazing, though, that just with a brief update from the water commissioners about their $7 million project, they told us about it, told FinCom, didn't even have to tell town meeting about it.
Crazy, right?
It just got approved on the consent agenda, so good for them. There are discussions going on with, that our water commissioners are in conversation with the Concord water commissioners about Nagog Pond, and we'll get more information about that. Stormwater, the big news is that, as far as we know, year one of the new MS4 permit kicks in on July 1st, 2018. That's a year later than it was originally meant to. This time last year, EPA delayed the permit for a year, and EPA has recently announced that they're going to not delay it further, that they're going to implement it on the new year. So we've gotten a running start of this new permit requirements with the, we're entering our third year of funding. We had $100,000 a year for 3 years from the cell tower funds through the Clean Lakes Committee. And so, and we haven't spent all that money, but we will be able to undertake the scope of services that Ty and Bond, our consulting engineer, had outlined for us. But we're actually be moving forward this year.
Yeah, just looking at this list here, Keith, I'm going to suggest it makes sense for you to continue right through 5, and then we'll stop and have because that's where we start getting board member input.
Okay, sure, yeah.
We'll stop and everybody chime in with their own
Okay,
ideas.
so next, after the infrastructure is number 4, transportation and commuter rail, Crosstown Connect. I'd recommend we continue with all of those again this year. And we're this was with the shuttle in particular, this is when we held up our end of the bargain
Yeah.
for the
Might want to let
expanded.
our TV audience know the significance of today in that regard, too.
Yeah, we had the Littleton Westford commuter rail shuttle was launched today. It is a limited service. It's twice in the morning, twice in the afternoon during rush hours. But those 4 shuttles will meet a total of 8 trains, because we've scheduled it so that whenever the shuttle is at the station picking up passengers, there's an inbound and an outbound train that are coming in the same window. So we even had passengers on it first day, folks that, a couple of fares that got off the train onto the shuttle were headed to IBM. So it's already in use. The Juniper Networks in Westford has set aside 12 park and ride spaces. As I've indicated before, we're pursuing conversations with IBM and its landlord for something similar here at 550 King Street. So I hope we'll be able to. We got a draft of a license agreement today, which we're reviewing and seeing if we either, and I talked to Bruno Fisher, the MART deputy administrator just now, out at the train station. We were there, and perhaps somewhere between either the town or MART, I think we can find someone to accept a license agreement, because it's a MART shuttle. I mean, if the town needs to be a party, we can. If MART can do it on their own, more power to MART. But it would be great if we could get park and ride spaces. I will say, though, that we're going to, what I don't even have predicted, that we're already seeing, there's a lot of inquiry about where can I park. that, hey, great, you got a shuttle that's going through Littleton Common, heading towards the train station twice in the morning. Where can is there a place that I can park to get on that train, to get on that shuttle? And we hope that that the IBM site will be part of the answer, but we will probably need to be exploring other
Right.
things too.
Okay.
not to
Well, we're not
offer
gonna
up
exhaust
any-
that topic
yeah.
tonight. I know you can
Yeah.
talk about it all night, and,
So we'll get there, and we're also working with, and so the other two things that I would predict that we'll be working on this year, expanding the shuttle route.
yeah.
We've got the initial route in place, I'm
As
sure.
soon as people hear
As
about
soon
it.
as they, yeah, and
Start
that
filling it
we
up.
expand it and go to other places. The one thing we have going for us, among many things, the fact that this shuttle is based not in Fitchburg, but at Devens.
Right.
And that's through agreement with Mass Development, some great work that they've done, recognizing that Devens is a hub, a transportation hub. So the ability for our regional transit authority to expand shuttle service for Littleton and for Boxborough and Harvard and this end is going to be
We're on board
greatly
on this. We
enhanced.
need to,
So, and then the other thing we're doing is facilitating additional parking at the commuter rail station, and that's twofold. One is that the MBTA itself is looking to expand its own property by 60 spaces. We haven't figured out, or they haven't figured out how they're going to do that yet.
and it factors into some of the planning board's
Yeah,
projects.
and
too.
then on the other side of the street, we have the ability to add 50 parking spaces on the K property land that will be deeded to the town.
All right.
And we're expanding so anyway, so that's that. On the road improvements, complete streets, I propose that we add TIP funding to the goal this year, and that's in part because the Transportation Improvement Program is where the funding for the $3.6 million for Foster Street improvements will come from. MassDOT, our Project Review Committee, has already approved inclusion of a Foster Street improvements project from Taylor to Balsam Lane, the subdivision for the Durkee property. And I've already had discussions with MassDOT about expanding the scope of that project to also include realignment of Grimes Lane, should we choose to do so, because that would then allow for those additional 50 spaces on the other side of the street and a safer intersection near the railroad tracks. And I think it will greatly enhance the fundability and maybe even the priority that a project like that gets. So,
Okay. Again, I'll run around the board for members who had suggestions relative to the infrastructure, transportation, or roadway improvement, general topic areas. Chuck, from your...
Yeah, I was just all about complete streets, MassWorks tip, just to make sure we've done a good job at that, and the fact that Chris has, since Chris has been on board, he's prepared a lot of those plans for us, and just
Yep.
continue to charge down that road and have projects that are ready to go and shovel-ready, as they say.
Okay.
Yeah, as far as the MBTA, just continue on the same path, just trying to improve parking. And as far as under the parking, just around the common area, just if we're looking at adding additional spaces for the shuttle, maybe some of the spaces on Stevens Street, or maybe some spaces out here on Shattuck Street, or, that could be designated as park and ride spaces, or maybe there's someplace else that we can find that,
Right.
rob some space
Yep.
in order to.
Get creative.
Yeah.
Yep.
And there's a number of park and rides are on the off-ramps of, if you go down 93 and like Andover and Tewksbury, literally on the little triangle that's inside of the ramp, there's a lot of van pool parking and
Right.
that kind of thing. So, maybe there's some dead space. I think of the Parley, that right off the ramp
Yeah.
there, that kind of space. It's out of the path of the shuttle right
Yep.
now,
Yep.
but space like that, we could identify and potentially.
Oh, I mean, the Mass
utilize.
Highway property, state property, not town property, right over by Route 2 and 4 Taylor Street would be perfect, but whether they want to give any of that up, I don't know.
We got over across some chip shots. I mean, there's a lot of different parcels that we can.
That was
potentially
where
tap.
Politech was, any of those spots in there, right, a lot of it, okay. I noticed too, Chuck, that you had actually an economic development topic, which we did not hit when we were on that, on your second page. You want to speak to that volunteer training?
Okay, yeah, well, yeah, so did I say specifically economic development?
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm reading it as, it's employment development.
Employment,
Never
yeah,
mind, we'll get to that later. I see it as economic development, but.
But I mean, if anybody new that comes onto the Economic Development Committee, it would be, I think that we need to make sure that we're preparing people to be as effective as possible when we ask volunteers to step up and give them the resources they need in order to do the job most effectively.
Yeah. No, that's an important topic. I know Cindy is very much, interested in making sure that the board service community involvement is done properly, that we get people set up to succeed, not fail, and that's, I think, key to it. And, training wasn't specifically a topic we
No.
spoke to, but
Training
it's.
and oversight.
Right.
That's a, no, that's a good addition to the thinking on that topic.
Right. I know they referred to a website, I believe, for the,
That's the, that's the kind of like the
Yeah.
compliance stuff mostly.
yeah, right, but it's not really, you're right.
Yeah, I mean, anybody.
Take it
I mean,
a step
we've got-
further.
We've got training that we go to when we become selectmen. When I was on school committee, there was training we went
Right.
through the
Right.
Mass just
Yeah, it's a good
Association of
point.
School Committees, and there are other municipal.
Most of the stuff we offer
Trainings.
or have historically has been like how not to break the law. That's
Yeah,
about it.
exactly.
Right.
No, right, but what you're talking about is a different
And
level, it's
this could
smart.
be something we could kind of, I don't know, maybe we put something together and make it regional. and-
Pioneer it, make it a candidate for a, what's the award, Keith, that they hand out every now and then?
SB?
Not the ESPYs, but the P, begins with the P, haven't you scored one of those in your career yet? What's the, well, like what Thatcher Keys had got for the.
Oh, the Pickard
Yeah,
Innovation
there you go,
Awards?
Innovation Awards, there you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
Come on,
Two
you
of
know.
them.
I mean,
Matter of
Just not,
fact, oh,
just
those.
not, just not recently.
you know, your Hall of Fame resume's close, but,
Yeah,
maybe,
yeah,
maybe
no, I know.
a Pickett Award might throw it in, you know?
Got one for community policing hate crimes policy
Okay.
in '92, and then in,
Oh, you did? Okay.
yeah, and then
Oh,
in
all right. I
2000,
Spoke out of turn.
and then in 2003 for Provincetown's sewer.
You need one under our seal.
Yes,
Right, yeah,
that's right.
exactly. Right.
Yeah, well, we got an ICMA award in 2015 for Littleton.
Okay, Cindy, in the same general topic areas, infrastructure, roadway improvement,
Right.
transportation, did you have any
Right,
topic?
the only thing that's on my radar that's a concern to me is Foster Street, and I know we already have a project on
Sidewalking and the reconstruction.
I look at that street and I just look at the development that's going on in that area. I just want to keep it on the radar.
Right.
That I just know from people living on that, on Foster Street, and a lot of people walk that area. I think we really need to just keep on the radar, considering sidewalks on the entire street, that entire length of Foster Street, up to Bumblebee Park, up to the Four Corners.
Okay, good thinking. That is one of our upcoming roads, right, Keith? I mean, stuff's already been filed, right, for, is that?
Well, part of the, we'll have to take a look at it. Part of it with the Foster Street was that we had applied for a large length
Right,
to the state, and they cut it back to Taylor to,
Yeah, it was going the other way
Right.
towards Taylor
because
Street.
we had.
And we
had
were-
put
our
in-
interest was more
we
the
had
other
put in for
direction.
the whole thing. We had put in for the whole thing. I mean, for Foster.
well, we can't let that be the final word on the
No,
subject, we'll just stay
no,
on
we
that.
can, we'll
Yeah.
keep plugging away, and, when Chris brings forward his road plan this year, we'll take a look at what we can do with our own money and
Yep.
short
Yep.
term, and,
There are other communities that have as goals in the selectmen's, the towns or the selectmen's goals to lay 1 mile of sidewalk every year,
Right.
so there's,
I remember Dan Sullivan, kind of got us started in the rebuilding of sidewalks a million years ago, and that was kind of the thinking then. I don't know whether we have an official goal within within Chris's budget or not, or whether it's actually, wherever it is. But you're right, we should have a goal, otherwise we're not gonna meet it.
and I think a mile would be pretty aggressive, but.
Right.
There are definitely areas that we can identify that are higher risk.
And once again, master plan certainly supports sidewalk and connectivity between different neighborhoods and all the rest of that. Joe, I know you had input too in the specific, the roadway plans that you want to,
No, my only point was, I know Chris comes in once a year, I just want to see what his update is, if certain roads have deteriorated, and has that list changed at all? So the townspeople know exactly what the timetable is on the road system.
Yeah,
That's a good eye opener when he comes in and gives us that layout.
Yeah.
right. Now that we're into a pretty good flow, I'm gonna suggest a little change to what I recommended earlier. Even though we're an hour into this conversation, I think it's going pretty well. I'd like to take a good stab at finishing round one on this, if everyone's in agreement. And we'll spend a little time on policies tonight too, but we're undoubtedly gonna have to,
Carry that over.
yeah, carry that over.
Okay.
So, Keith, do you wanna dive in on, maybe we'll do a couple at a time there, the Elder and Human Services and public safety strategic plans?
Yep, Elder and Human Services, it was, you wanted to make sure that that was included in the town office space needs study for this past year, and you also wanted to expand the personal exemptions to the statutory limit. And so both of those were accomplished. Town meeting expanded the exemptions last October, and the space needs study, I think, has incorporated Elder Human Services. You've established and it's covered later on in here, talking about facilities, but you've established the Space Needs Working Group to develop short and long-range plans. You've got $200,000 funded by town meeting towards that project. And senior center and the needs of the seniors are on
Everybody's right there.
everybody's
Right.
top list of things to do.
Okay, how about the public safety?
Public safety is, we had a lot of activity in last year completing the fire station expansion project. We're moved towards implementing ALS, which we will, and the third item was the achieving full accreditation of the police department. And so for the, and you also had the police chief hiring process, appointment of the next chief.
Right.
So we've got, so we've completed fire station expansion project. The police department did achieve full accreditation. You did appoint a chief of police. The one thing on that list that remains to be done is implementing ALS, the Advanced Life Support. We met with the fire chief again today. We'll be giving you an updated presentation at the meeting on Monday night of all the steps that are in place to go forward with that ALS implementation. And so we'll be, and also things, yeah, it had passed over it here, the opioid Narcan outreach was also one of the public safety goals.
Very busy
So you
year,
wanna
I'll ask
have-
you to maybe
so-
speak to that in a moment,
Yeah.
Cindy?
Sure.
Okay. And Scott Holt, I'll good a point as any, I had the opportunity to get there for his presentation of his swearing in as lieutenant, and he had a good, strong grip. Keith, you had a chance to shake his hand too, and amazing, God, I mean, what progress, I mean, who knows what the end point is, but it was just such an encouraging thing to see him there and his family and the whole department, and,
Was at the graduation Friday night too.
oh, was he?
Yeah, I saw him at the
I didn't see him
graduation and went up, and
that's where you
his
saw him,
his wife came up and just pointed out that Scott was over there, so I walked over and said in a loud voice, "Lieutenant Holt."
Yeah,
And he turned around and, great handshake.
yeah,
That's excellent.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so to that end, we've, within those two general areas, Elder and Human Services and Public Safety strategic plans, why don't I start with you, Cindy? If you want to either update us specifically on your opioid Narcan activity, which has been significant over the past year, but also any goals, topics.
Sure. So I'll start first, actually, with Elder and Human Services, just a couple things that I wanted to talk about. Assisting seniors with aging in place is, I think, something that maybe we could be more proactive with. A lot of seniors don't necessarily want to move out of their homes. I believe that we can use CPA funds for that purpose to modify or,
Under the housing category?
yeah, incorporate some handicap accommodations so that they can stay in their home, especially with bathrooms and ramps and that sort of thing. So I just wanted to look into that further. And also, real estate tax relief benefits for the seniors. I think a lot of them aren't fully aware of what's available in the community to them, and those that are aware of it are hesitant to take advantage of it. So I'd like to just pursue how we can, or explore how we can consolidate all of that information, but just really get it out to the seniors and encourage them to utilize those benefits, because I think a lot of them are hesitant, or they just don't know about that they exist.
If we're doing that, I remember this in the past too, that the state, it was even like the Registry of Deeds office used to come out, because there are things like the Homestead Act that they don't always take full advantage of. So
Right.
we should make sure we incorporate the state folks in that as well.
Liz has done that.
Has she?
I think so. I think she had it.
Already, yeah.
I think she had put something in one of the broadcasters.
Yeah.
Right.
It's-
And I mentioned both of these topics to Liz, so we did talk about it, but I think there's more that we could do. so-
absolutely.
Yeah, so I just would like to pursue
Into
that.
the Sudbury tax relief. Where
Right.
we have a split tax rate. It was kind of a non-starter.
Right.
She's already starting to prepare for the health fair that she does with, in conjunction with the schools. So
Okay.
maybe those ideas are something that we can shoot to her, and then
Right.
because she's starting to plan now.
Right, excellent.
That's for the fall.
And that's for the fall, including, bring
Have an
somebody in to speak
informational
about the
table,
whole-
have
Yeah.
somebody out there.
Right,
Sure.
yeah, that's a great
I think
idea.
someone from DA's office for some of the
Yeah,
cyber crimes.
scam stuff, you know.
Right, right.
Sheriff's office could do
Sure.
something.
Right, that's a great idea. And as far as the opioids, we formed the Littleton Coalition Against Addiction, which has gone really well. Been working a lot with incoming Chief Pinard on that topic. We actually went and visited a methadone clinic in Tewksbury and got some information. So we're looking at establishing Narcan training in the community. We're looking now to collaborate with other communities, Westford, Acton, Air, and reaching out to them just to make it more of a collaborative effort and branch out and reach more people.
I'll tell you, of the things you've done, they're all laudable. The one I think that's most impactful was the interviews with actual local residents
Videos.
with who are willing to talk openly about their own stories. And
Right.
if you can match a face, even if you don't know the people, it's just to know that it's, your neighbors, it's your
People
Right.
learn more from stories, and especially stories from
Right.
people that they know what they can relate to.
Right.
Right, I just taped, I did an interview with Barbara Wickham about SANS. We talked about SANS because we're learning, and we knew there's a direct correlation between depression, suicide, and addiction. And then I had a mother and daughter come forward, and I interviewed them together. And so that was last week, so those interviews should be coming out again soon, but
Great work.
yeah, no, it's really, it's been, and it's surprising to me because I don't know the full story when I talk to them. So to be sitting there and we just talk and we just have a conversation, it's really impactful. And they just want to help other people. So I'm happy that people are coming forward to share their stories. So we're looking to start, I've talked to Nicole, she wants to start a support group based on the people that we do know in the community, and again, collaborate with other communities, just to have people get together and talk and share experiences, and just try to build on that, because really, until we start talking about it more freely and openly, it's not going to go away. Robert and I just got a call last weekend from a kid I met for the first time at the pub a couple months ago, that Robert used to work with, that died of an overdose, 38 years old.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe it because I had just met him. It was just one of those things. Yeah, so it's terrible. And his dad wrote a note that said, how do I tell his nieces and nephews he died of an overdose, you know? So we're just going to keep moving forward with that. So we are looking for more outreach, more Narcan training and things like that. We're looking to do a candlelight vigil in August. So there's a lot more in the works with that.
Good. You
Yeah.
also have a couple of topics under humanitarian that are related.
Oh, right. The Veterans Corner, they have 300 names to add to the Veterans Corner
Wow.
that Mr. Borowski, the Veterans Agent, gathered through our last campaign last year when we started raising awareness about it, 300 names. So I met with them. We're actually going to have a meeting again to really just come up with a design about what additional, I don't want to call them monuments, but stones need to be added, and just sort of come up with a preliminary design, and determine the cost associated with that, so that we can get that
Seems
moving
wild in
forward.
this day and age that we're still adding names, but I mean, I uncovered that when I was doing the research for the World War I speeches. that
Right.
In 1973, there was a fire that destroyed 16 million files, and they were the only records in a lot of cases of anybody's World War I or World War II veterans' service, and,
Well, there's been, so post 9/11 now, or even, since the Vietnam War, think of how many other conflicts we've
sure,
had.
yes, right.
So a lot of them are those individuals.
Yep.
So we're going to move forward with that again and revisit it and get that done for them.
Okay, terrific. Joe, in these general areas, you had anything?
No, I Cindy hit one of the areas, every year we talk about trying to find space for the seniors, and
Yes.
it always gets put off once again,
Yeah.
and we have to start, hopefully the Space Needs Committee, they know, what the problem is, can be
Right.
worked on.
Right.
And I think one of the failures that we had last year, we depended so much on that
Architectural.
Oh, right, and it'd be less
came in, it
than
really didn't tell us
overwhelming.
much more than
yeah.
we already knew, and we kept on saying, it's coming in, and we
We lost time.
Right,
lost time.
yep.
Yeah. Same month.
But
the only thing
it's in capable hands now. Right?
It's in hands.
It's in hand. Okay,
Alumni field team, so.
A quick question about the
Yes.
ALS. You mentioned the ALS. Is there any jeopardy that the ALS is not going to be able to come to fruition, or is this where are we at with?
well, we're gonna get a
No,
full
we're-
update
hi-
there
hi-
Monday.
Yeah,
but, yeah.
hiring's in place. The state is going to be conducting its inspection in the next week or so. We're bringing, we don't even need to adjust the rates. That we're looking at what action items we have to have the board take. The existing rate structure that you approved a few years ago to authorize pro EMS, those rates work for us. And the optics work well of us not having to ask you for a rate increase.
We still have an unsettled contract out there, but that's
Yes.
kind of a different issue, but it is
Right.
related, yeah.
But we, as far as we know, we were in agreement on the money, but.
Right.
So we appear to be ready to go forward, that it might kick in some point during the month of July, if not just on July 1st, but that our
Is Chief
service.
Lozinski coming in Monday night?
Yes,
Well, then
yeah,
let's,
yeah.
we'll
Yeah.
do it then.
Yeah, we met with him today, and feel like we're in good shape.
Just didn't want any surprises on Monday.
Okay. Mike?
Yeah, just a quick question for Cindy, because I know you've been tracking or trying to track this. When we visited the Council on Aging and discussed some of the needs and the rest, what came up was the amount of time and effort that they had to expend in scheduling transportation for medical care and other trips. In other words, logistics. And we asked the director several questions about this. And apparently the amount of time that she and her group have to spend doing this is time away from elder services of other kinds. I was wondering, have you heard that? And I know you picked up on it. Is this something that could be addressed
being
by
addressed.
providing them some more
It
assistance?
is being addressed?
Yeah.
Yeah, some of the problems that they were
It's
having.
advertised right now.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
is
Yeah, we
that
have
there was a
another
lack of
position.
staff, so.
Okay,
So what
that's-
happens is when somebody calls out, then they're really, because they're getting that call before they even start work for us, so. They're hiring some people, more drivers, and I think that's coming a little bit more under control. So it's just a staffing issue, because we already
Yeah.
sub out the
The dispatchers.
dispatch, so.
I have to say, through Crosstown Connect, that the communities are looking at the model of perhaps hiring drivers collectively rather than individually, because then just as we pooled our resources now for dispatchers, we have full-time dispatchers that serve multiple towns, instead of each one having a part-time person. So we're looking, we haven't crunched all the numbers yet, but we're looking at the model of whether we could better meet the transportation needs of our councils on aging by having a more centralized approach. Since we've got now 7 towns working together, because Sudbury and Concord are joined the group. So we may be able to do more with,
Yeah, there was a big,
with the drivers and the vehicles.
just want to make sure it was.
If I
Good
might,
point.
just because I noticed that if we took one thing out of order here and did 10 first town facilities, we could just continue this discussion
sure.
and let
Let's go
Keith
go down to-
update us then. We can finish off those topic areas and go back and hit organizational and find a fiscal plan after that.
So looking at number 10, town facilities, the goals this past year, complete alumni field, the athletic field needs study, and the town office's space needs study. So alumni field, check, big check, although we've got punch list, I think, of issues.
Check it, check.
Punch list.
Punch list.
I got punched a lot in that process.
He threw
The,
a couple too.
I think following up the athletic field needs assessment, I mean, that's an important part of having our strategy for which fields are you going to develop, and what are you going to do with it.
Well, we can add the softball field to that list.
Yep.
Cooper.
Right, Cooper,
Yeah,
yeah.
Cooper,
Right,
yeah.
well, we'll give you a chance to speak to that in a moment, yeah.
And then the town offices, space needs study and ADA accessibility. And also, the library building project was on your list last year, that, from last year, and it was last July that the Mass Board of Library Commissioners announced that Littleton's project was number 5 on the waiting list. And to my knowledge, I think we've increased by 1, because there was one
Demetrius, yeah.
community that.
Hi.
Yeah, Penetra,
Demetra Taylor,
Demetra.
115 Taylor Street, member of the Board of Trustees of the Lincoln Park Library. You're now number 3 on the list.
Huh.
And I believe that Chris Aslin and Jenna Brownson are scheduled to come to next week's meeting to give you an
Yes,
update.
Yes,
Yeah.
yep.
okay, good. Keith, also the Baker Homestead's on there too?
Yeah, I've added the Baker Homestead since where it's a facility that we've, that we.
process of acquiring.
Are in the process of acquiring.
Right.
And figuring out what to do with, and that will be on our agenda on the June 25th meeting.
With the Historic Commission coming in?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
And CPC, too.
CPC too,
since
right.
They can bring their check.
Their money, yeah, our money that they're handling. Okay, on any other town facility-related
And also the
topics?
Veterans Memorial.
That's
the
right,
Veterans
which
Corner
Cindy
Memorial
spoke
this
to.
year.
Right.
Okay, any other, Chuck, I think you had a couple other in that category area, didn't you?
Well, yeah, just
Cooper Field Farm,
Cooper Farm, the athletic field that the area A in black, I think it was.
yeah,
The acreage as you're coming from the center of town,
right,
the first part of the Cooper Farm on the right-hand side next to Church Meadows.
yeah. And there's also the building next door, which we've had issues with, the house.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Which would, that should probably fall under this as well, right,
Right.
as part of facilities for us. But that's just something that a number of people are saying, when are we gonna be able to
Right.
build that? Are we earmarking money for that? How do we do that? Do we need to fundraise for it? So there's a lot of folks from the youth groups that
Yeah.
are asking, when is that field gonna be usable and accessible? And, do we need to look at parking? And,
Right.
we talked about curb cuts with Cloverdale. Is it gonna need to be a curb cut? Are we gonna be able to access from the new residential development from that road for parking? So there's just, again, putting things on the radar just to,
Yes.
find out if there is some financial impact, what is it? And, do we look at CPC funding? Do we look at fundraising? How do we make that a reality?
Okay.
So,
Well, we probably ought to, I don't know if does that fall neatly under any of our established categories, or, well, town facilities, I guess it kind of.
I think it's facilities. Well, yeah, recreational and open space too, so.
Keith, did we get a response yet? Didn't we send a letter relative to how the house is being used and,
Well, we voted to
Exercise?
accept the deed, but the
Okay.
deed has not been finalized, and our inquiries about the status of the deed have gone unanswered. So I think it's the sort of thing that we'll have to just start asking when they appear before the planning board.
And we sent that to who?
To the M&M's council.
Matt and Mike, and who is their counsel?
Jennifer,
I don't remember her name.
A local firm, or?
No.
Okay, all right, good.
So,
Okay,
but I have town council calling weekly
right,
to see where.
have them call strongly.
Where it is.
thank you.
Yeah, we can do it, yeah, not so meekly by showing up at a planning board
Right.
meeting and expressing concern. Or
Well, they've got a proposal, Thursday night.
This Thursday night. How's that going?
Okay, now, I guess moving back, thank you. Joe, did you have anything to add? Didn't recall whether you had anything under that topic area. Back to organizational review. I know that's largely a lot of topic area that Cindy and I were covering, and we had some general, yes.
Sorry to interrupt you, but just
Yes.
a couple of the other things that I had.
Sure,
on-
I'm
on-
sorry,
on
I
the slides.
didn't
No, it's okay.
realize you were.
I had put school department down there, just from we had been spitballing at one point in time to say if we were to do something potentially with the school department off premises, whether it be modular or something like that, just to throw that out there as a possibility, but also the bathhouse for Park and Rec or space.
Of course, yeah, that needs to be in there.
That's-
No, repeat again what I missed what you meant about the schools,
As kind of looking at any possibility when it comes to space needs.
Yep.
We've got X number of departments and folks that are demanding space in this building, that
Right.
use space in this building. If, for
You're talking
instance,
about prospectively moving them out of there and,
correct, it frees up space. So
Right,
if Park and Rec, if we decided that Park and Rec should go build a two-story bathhouse and house everything that they have on the second floor of the new bathhouse on Long Lake,
Yeah.
that would free up a lot of space, which would free up a lot of
yeah.
our needs
Yep.
within this building, so it would solve a lot of problems, at least on a short term.
Well, you guys at least have the authority to ask those questions on the Space Needs Committee, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, I
So
appreciate you, is that on the radar screen too for, it is?
Yes,
Okay,
yeah.
okay.
So I just wanted to put that out there as, under
The schools,
facilities.
do they have a seat at that table? I can't remember. Do they have an appoint? They do?
They do.
Steve Mark.
Everybody is.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
actually Matthew Hunt's on it as well, representing the school
Okay.
committee. Steve's been attending as well.
Great. All right. Is that
Good,
it?
thank you.
Okay, cool. Keith, do you want to cover any of that organizational review stuff? And then maybe Cindy and I can jump in a little bit there too.
Sure.
Get back to all right, number 8. Selectmen's Retreat. You had your first one, and seems to have gone pretty well, and I
Yep.
think you wanted to make it an annual event. So you might want to think about picking a date. I would guess, I would just observe we're going to be busy in October for town
Right,
meeting.
right.
And that if you could pick a time, if you could find a time in July or
Right,
August.
I mean, Anthony had mentioned something about would we be willing to do July. I mean, as long as we can pick a date that works on everybody's various vacation schedules, absolutely. And I would just ask people to consider too, now that we've had one, in general, I think we'd all agree, it had value, but each of us might have different ideas about what we would do differently.
Better, sure.
How to make it better. I mean, one thing I have in mind is how we memorialized, what were the takeaways? I know we had notes, but, like a Kurosawa movie, everybody has a different interpretation of what was said there. So, I don't know, maybe even a different facilitator, nothing opposed to the fellow that was here last year, but everybody has their own different style, different set of questions. So I don't know if you guys have, or if anybody has any suggestions. I'm all for doing it again, all for doing it sooner rather than later, but before we jump into something and just, stamp again what we did last year, let's think a little bit, and I'll just leave that open,
Could have a cape or something.
And now somebody's
Yeah,
thinking,
Newport.
yeah. We'll get that new shuttle van, we'll take,
Tuck it for a week in July.
right, yeah, he only needs a
Maybe
one-way
that-
ticket, this
Maybe
guy.
that week will work out for everybody.
Right. Okay, moving on, Keith?
Next is let's see, last year we had organizational review, bylaw review, review status of boards and committees. We had a list of ad hoc town boards that established by the selectmen, which were abolished. It was a sizable list. If you want to take a closer look this year at boards that are established by town meeting, that you might want to get a running, if you want to get into it, that probably need to shoot for next year's annual town meeting, just because with probably an October special town meeting, that warrant's going to close in, in early, mid-September. And that doesn't give you a lot of time to do things.
Well, I agree for probably the bulk of what we're talking about, that may be true, but I don't know. Some of what Cindy and I are talking about in that general topic area would be policy-driven, some of it is just, and some of it would be bylaw driven. I guess we'll have to take a look at that. But I'd like to
Right.
achieve whatever we could this
Yeah,
fall.
Yeah, to the extent, if there are things that require town meeting votes, those things may have to be kicked ahead to the annual, but you can certainly do the organizational stuff. And the one thing that I'd want to add to your list is a category of skill development, what I'm calling succession planning and reorganization, specifically around the assistant town administrator, because we've had the discussion, we've had them on and off for all the time that Anthony's been here, of how to more formally integrate the position with even more specific duties in the organization.
Right.
And a lot of that is around, we have skill building and succession development plans in other departments, and it's a way to identify what professional development opportunities you want to offer specifically, and how you reorganize the town government structure to help to take advantage of
If
what
you've
our
got,
needs are.
if you've got some ideas on that, each of you, maybe Cindy and I should sit down with you as a first step, because,
Yeah.
we've already shared in general terms, and Cindy has actually circulated earlier today this isn't relative to the succession planning, but a couple of the other topic areas we covered by email today. I don't know if you want to speak to that, both the letter and the,
Sure.
and the calendar, or what are we calling it?
Right, something that did derive from our retreat last year was setting up a procedural timeline for the selectmen to follow, just to keep us on task, because we do obviously get sidetracked from continually with other issues that come before us, and we kind of forget about our main mission or objective, so to speak. So I did come up with a proposed procedural timeline running from May at election time all the way through April of the following year. And I did send a copy to Paul, I didn't
Yep.
email one to
Oh,
everybody. But
I'm
that,
sorry, I thought that was circulated.
No,
I
it's
guess
my
we'll
mistake.
circulate them. No, that was.
so I can share that with everybody, just so you can go through it, but it's definitely something that we talked about at the retreat last year. We
Right.
thought it would be a great idea, so I'd like to maybe have everybody review it, give your input, and like the retreat, so to speak.
Right.
Like,
Or
what is
what
it?
jumped out to me was, because we haven't done it yet this year, the annual reviews for our
Right.
various direct reports. And
Right.
I think if we do, as Cindy suggested, have a, kind of a rigorous calendar on the obligations we have to meet, so that we don't put ourselves in a behind the eight ball and,
Right.
time situations.
Right. And the other thing that we talked about, and I worked with Diane, the town clerk, on this, was setting expectations with the people, the individuals that we do appoint to the committees and boards, just so that they're clear on what we expect their role to be, and what the mission of the committee that they're appointed to entails. And so I worked with Diane, because when they go to see Diane and get sworn in, she does give them a packet of information, but I came up with a letter that we could perhaps give to people the night that we appoint them, reminded them they need to go see Diane within X amount of time. They've been appointed to this committee, this is the mission of the committee, and reminding them of the responsibilities if they are the chairman of the committee, if they are the clerk of the committee. So I'll circulate that to
Yeah,
everybody
please
too,
do.
as well, to take a look at, so you can give your thoughts on that. And the other thing that I incorporated into the procedural timeline was to get a regular update from the committees, even if it's an email through the town administrator, or if the chairman wants to come forward to the boards, at least twice a year, just to keep us apprised of what's going on. I mean, I know we are free to attend any of their meetings at any time, but we do get bogged down with other meetings. This way, it's more of a set timeline and guide to keep us.
That expectation is there from the beginning.
Yeah, exactly, thank you. So that was another thing I incorporated, and then we talked about the reviews, the performance reviews and different things like that procedurally. So I'll circulate this so you guys can take a look at it and give us your input.
And some of the other ideas that we hit earlier in the year relative to organizational review, a bylaw review, some of that, I guess maybe we'll get into when we get into the
Right.
policies, revisit
Right.
some of, I don't think anything's changed dramatically from what we talked about, but at least we haven't talked about any changes, so we'll just have to revisit some of those topics. If they're,
Right.
If we're reviewing in terms of succession planning, a couple of years into having an assistant, it's appropriate, I think, for the, board to consider what our relationship is with each of the departments, what's working, and, what's the best structure that helps us make it work.
Right.
And, what was the other thing? Oh, the other idea, which Cindy and I think we both embraced, and we haven't found a way yet to engage the department heads on, is whether or not can be a data-driven review along the lines of the Aimstat proposal. And I think, one thing which we can easily do is bring somebody in to present it to the board, so, we've got the PowerPoint that Keys are shared with us,
Right.
but somebody who wants to show us that. I think there's value in it. We do, a lot of our departments already do it to a certain level, but to the extent that it's not uniform, that's a weakness, so that I think it could be easily integrated using existing data without reinventing the wheel and giving people, probably appropriately at budget time, but maybe there's an argument to do it at another time, an opportunity to review a department through, metrics that are not just budget requests, but, where you get calls from, if you're a highway, where are the potholes, what's driving it, how do what's the turnaround time, all those kind of performance-related things, and there's ways of applying it in all the departments, police, fire, highway.
I think municipal will
Hope so.
enable
Yeah.
a lot of that.
Yeah, that's a good point, and, we have high hopes, I guess, what is July 1st, we're still hoping, Keith, for the full integration of Munis, or?
It's partial, it's
no.
with the,
Yeah, it's general ledger portion, requisitions, payroll won't be coming on till January.
How many years are we into this?
Yeah, it takes
This
a
is
long time.
this is the
something
first
like
year.
that.
Well, it's not the first year we've been talking about it.
no, it's the first year we did it, that we started 1 year ago.
Well,
We went to town meeting to get the money.
2 years ago.
Last year, yeah.
okay, well, and with that is, the open checkbook concept, and then other ways of making the website. I think that's a topic too, that, we have a new website from last year, but increasingly, anything we can do to make it more, I would say, and I get this feedback from townspeople as well, more interactive, and more real-time. And, a lot of that and more transparent. There's much of the town's business that we can put out there that people can look at, easily navigate, have some input back to us at. And a lot of that, making that happen involves solving the problem of the, everything comes through the funnel of Nancy and, and her assistant, and we gotta find a way to get around that. The data people, because if everything's coming to one funnel top, then that's a problem. So there's ways of, hopefully Munis will solve some of that, but if we need to graft other outfits on top of that too, that might be better than hiring people in-house, just outsourcing some of those functions.
I would just caution us where it is new, and I think Nancy being kind of in control is probably a good thing now, because if you get too many administrators we end up having a mess.
Well, we want to start from a place of what can we do, or what do people want us to see us doing that we aren't doing now? And, have that
Plenty of people that are running
conversation.
websites out there that we can learn from,
Yeah,
so.
oh, yeah, well, I know, I agree. I mean, I don't have any preconceived notion of how we want to change it, other than just the gut notion that we can be doing more with it, using it more to benefit the
Well, and
town.
remember, in addition to the website this year too, we also implemented See-Click Fix, which allows people to report.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Yep.
Real time.
Social media presence, we're on Facebook and Twitter. I was live tweeting from town meeting to keep people abreast as we were approving articles. So, we're trying to do, besides the
And we double
website.
crossed them by having such a short town meeting.
Right.
Yeah.
But again, a lot of that, even though we're doing a good job, I think, of pushing information out, or a better job, but we don't have a lot of the interactive capability there. And there are models out there for that that happen. A lot of people are just more comfortable interacting with whatever department on the internet, and it's,
And there are, just like the See-Click Fix, there are basically text addresses that we can set up to collect that information, that
Right.
data. So
Yeah.
there's, then that's very simple and inexpensive. I wouldn't be able to do it, but
Right.
from what I
Nor
understand,
would
it's
I.
pretty simple
Yeah.
and pretty inexpensive to do.
okay. All right, so we're not gonna resolve that, but just
Right.
to recognize that website improvements is a general topic area. Recognizing the progress we have made.
Yes.
Keith, you wanna,
The, what else? The three-party agreement for on this list is the fields
MOU.
maintenance, park rec, school, selectmen.
That has been done. Gary has made some suggestions for a final edit after we had come to what we thought was consensus. And we were all gonna sign it and have it deliverable for town meeting.
well, a town meeting.
We didn't say which town meeting. Was our hope that we would have that for a town meeting, but I'll have to circle back with Mike and Gary again, and have that executed. So hopefully, before the end of June, we'll have something in front of us to sign.
Okay, great. Okay, town meeting improvements.
Well, I don't know how you can improve on this year's town meeting, but part of it's just dumb luck. It went great. Well, sometimes the town just says, yep, aces, you're doing a great job, and other towns,
Well, what was fascinating about the town meeting is that for the topics they wanted to discuss, they had a lot of time.
sure, yeah, that's
An
true.
hour, more than an
Yeah, the
hour.
marijuana and the, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, and all we ask is $45 million with no questions.
Yeah, I mean, but the improvements weren't really challenged this year, but I just got a sense that they seem to work, the structural changes.
They did, yeah, that they were introduced at at earlier town meetings, so it wasn't brand new
Right.
at the May town meeting. We'd done it in October, I think we had done some of the things before. Let's see, what else do we have?
What do we have with the LCT coverage? Is there more in the pipeline?
There is, I don't know that we specifically have plans for more boards coverage. They are making some technical upgrades to the equipment for, I don't know if they've done it yet. They've had the money for this room for a
Yep.
while. I don't know if we're on HDTV yet or not. We have money for 307. We've got the fire department community room was also wired. So we have the capacity now
Right.
for locations for live broadcasting.
I know there was some discussion, and I don't follow enough by watching it to know whether it's been implemented at all, to get around to various boards on a rotating basis. Has any of that happened? I mean, it's primarily, who gets broadcast? Selectmen, FinCom, well, a lot of boards, actually, we
Yeah,
do
a
too.
lot of our
Trustees.
library trustees have.
Yeah.
have
What a health
been,
is now.
Yeah, I know, yeah.
Right.
Well, actually, that's progress has been
No,
made
but you
there.
don't have Conservation Commission,
Okay,
I don't think. don't have community,
But that room is good for it, you can do it up there, right? Yeah.
yeah. I don't think they have Conservation Commission, although I'm watching.
I think it was Morbus.
I'm usually watching this show on.
Right.
Right.
Maybe, could you just ask Mark or whomever to give us a little memo on what's currently getting covered right now, and, you know,
I know Kirby in the past has just requested that they be provided with ample notice if you do want coverage at an event, because
right,
they have some scheduling
Yeah, I mean,
limitations.
I had received some pushback when we have like new committees, like master plan or other, or. the-
AFRAC.
Yeah.
right,
we've
right.
Right.
Got some pushback about, hey, you know, where did these come from? And we said, well, we just thought of it, so.
Mark Quarry produces a monthly report. I'll forward it to the board.
Okay.
The first time I saw it, I thought it was pretty good. Told what he's covering, the.
That might be all we need, I just
Yeah.
wasn't aware of it,
So I'll
yeah.
send it to
Helpful.
everybody right now.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Anthony.
And then there was the suggestion, Cindy's, I think, for paperless.
Yes.
documentation.
Right, so during our last Space Needs meeting, we were talking about, and I think Joe had mentioned this too, and I'm going to say immediate, providing immediate relief for the seniors as far as freeing up some space here in town, the town departments. And so we started talking during that discussion and came to the realization there's a lot of documents that are being stored here at Shattuck Street that perhaps we don't need anymore. So and a lot of those pertain to the Council on Aging. I followed up, I talked to Liz about it. She's actually going through what those records are. So I really wanted to review the municipal records retention schedule that the state provides to see what documents we are retaining here at town offices that we probably don't need to have anymore. And then the method to dispose of those, either scanning or shredding those records, and maybe consider going paperless. And I know people gasp when they hear that, but I know law firms that have done it, I know different accounting firms that have done it, I know, right?
Boards of Selectmen
But
have mostly done it.
To me, it's worth looking at, because maybe there's a storage room that's currently being used that could be an office, and maybe there's a lot more space here that we have that we just don't realize we have. So I think it's worth looking at. So I'd like to look into that.
That'd be great, yeah, because it was the reason we have a conference room up in room 305
Right, it's a
now.
prime
Threw out a bunch of
example.
papers?
It was a small fire.
Finding.
Right,
Yes.
Small
No,
controlled
just-
fire.
Well,
right,
just by purposing some other areas
Right.
for dead storage.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So I thought that would be something that's worth looking into. The other thing that came up during, I think it was our joint budget review meeting, was the training and continuing education requirements that a lot of the departments came forward and said they needed X amount of dollars in addition to their regular budget because of these requirements mandated by the state. So perhaps we should ask each department to tell us what those are and what the annual cost is, just so that we can have a handle on it and be aware of what exactly the state's mandating and the impact it would have on our budget.
So Conscom does broadcast
Yeah,
live.
I'm just, I stand corrected, I've never, usually somewhere else on Monday night, but
Right.
they have Conservation Commission,
Okay.
2 flights up.
Can you turn it up?
Dave, speak up.
What's Guthrie have to say?
Yeah.
And then there was one final thing, the town government study created 10 years ago is really an interesting document. There was some recommendations in that report. I know Mr. Joe was involved with that.
Joe.
Mr. Joe. So I'd like to review those recommendations and see what we've
Yeah, that's great,
accomplished,
yeah.
what remains outstanding.
That's good.
Yeah,
Miss Cindy?
Right.
I still have members of that committee that ask how many of the recommendations have been adopted.
really.
Well, that was long enough ago that we appointed that committee in my first go-round of the selectmen.
Really?
That was a while ago, so it is appropriate to bring that up again, and that was a lot of good work that probably shouldn't be lost to the ages. Let's look at it again.
Yeah, somebody
One
talked
of
me,
there was
somebody talked me into that.
That's- He was in retirement 15 years ago.
One of the recommendations that we're now just getting to, the facilities manager,
Right.
was a recommendation in that report, and now we're just ramping up for.
I'm still not sold on it, but that's all right. So, well, but one that we did do immediately, which has borne great fruit, I think, is, that was, what prompted that was initial attempt to create a finance director, which failed at town meeting because it wasn't part of a bigger review. At least that was the objection from the finance committee at the time. So we appointed this committee, and that was one of the major recommendations, was the creation of the finance department. I think we all know how well that worked out. Yeah.
AAA,
That's right.
yep.
Yeah. Okay. Keith, you want to speak briefly to the fiscal stuff? I have a couple of topics there I want to cover too.
Yeah,
and-
on the number 9, long-range fiscal plan, one of the items was update financial policies.
I've got a proposal. All right. We need to review, we need to go over the audit with the finance committee. So why don't we schedule a joint meeting with them and then an hour, and for like 7:30 or whatever night their convenience, and an hour before that, convene the finance, the fiscal, financial policies committee, which never got around to doing last year.
Right.
And invite from our committee, it has, well, for both the finance committee and the selectmen, it's historically been the chair and vice chair, but I don't think that's written in stone anywhere. In the school committee, sends somebody, and then there's the various officials, Keith, right, from the finance department. I don't know if you're interested in serving?
Sure.
Okay, so then if the board objects,
Okay with it.
that would be the
That's fine.
two of
So we'll
us.
schedule a joint meeting with FinCom.
We'll probably do for one anyway.
Yeah, we've been trying to figure out when to get a meeting with the auditor.
Yeah, okay, so maybe we do it around that, and whenever it is, suggest, I don't know, have they reorganized yet? Is there a new chair on
I
FinCom
don't
yet?
think they've met since 10.
Okay, all right.
Every year?
And school committee, have they, is Mike still chair?
Yes.
He is, okay.
He was last,
He was, yeah, Friday night he was, I know that, yeah. Good speech, a lot of good speeches Friday night.
then I saw it, I hadn't realized
Wasn't
that
sure.
Charlie Ellis is chair of the Neshoba
Oh, is he?
Valley.
Oh, wow.
School committee, so.
Very good.
He and Karen Polito handed out the diplomas.
Oh, you were there
I was there
Saturday
Saturday
morning?
morning, yeah.
Is she getting a little wigged out, was she? Yeah. I mean, you know,
There's no 21A yet?
she's got state police, you know. like,
Well, yeah, it was a state police guy there, and never mind.
No, I'm sure she was happy to see you.
Sorry.
Okay, moving right along.
Moving right along.
Margaret
okay.
aware of all this? Never mind.
Sure, yeah, Margaret had a chance to go, and
Is Mr. Polito over there?
let's see, what do we have? You did amend your investment policy last year.
Can I swing back?
Yeah, yeah.
Sure.
Circle back?
Sure.
Just, I mean, as long, not that I've been here for a long time, but as long as I've been here, we've gotten, Justy has been the auditor, and I don't know
Yeah.
how frequently we should revisit
Great
this.
topic, I agree. I mean, with no, once upon a time,
Who's auditing the auditor, I guess, is my
Right.
question.
I heard years ago, and I don't know where it came from, that the good rule of thumb is that you should have an auditing firm for 3 or 4 years in a row and then change them out. And, you know, with just so different eyes are looking at it. I don't know, I know, Keith, these folks have been there for a while, but they haven't been there forever. Do you have a thought on that, or?
I'd say reach a joint, from my observation, the Finance Committee is very proprietary about the audit.
No,
So I would say, and to the point where one year we tried.
it's addressed to us.
Huh? Well, I know.
pay for it.
I know, but one year we.
I'm paying for this audit.
One year when Mr. Glavy was on the Finance Committee, the great exception was taken that the Board of Selectmen had deigned to review it with the auditor on their own. So I, just mindful of that sensitivity.
Well, do they have a copy of this? Because they should.
Sure,
Yeah, okay,
sure.
all right, yeah. I think my
That's just
complaint
our-
was accurately back then that we were getting it far after the selectmen at the time, we being the FinCom at the time.
Right,
Selectmen were paying for it.
Right.
Good point.
right, their name was on it. Selectmen.
That was
So,
then, this is now.
But it's been my observation that the Finance Committee is very proprietary about the audit. And I would say that any policy decisions you make about the audit should be
discuss
should
with the
be
fiscal
discussed with
policy.
them.
There you go, that's
Yeah.
fine, I have no problem with that, but I just think there's a good argument to that.
Sure.
Is it something that goes out to bid? Is it something that they just anoint them year after year, or?
It's, well, I had the experience just at the Montezut Regional Transit Authority, where I'm chair of the finance committee
Okay.
there, and we changed auditors simply because it was 5 years. And we
good enough reason.
just,
Yeah.
and hey, you know what? That was the only reason.
Yeah.
Because we had a procedure that says you should do it every few years, and
Right.
we don't have that.
No.
Maybe when you're discussing your policies, though.
That's, yeah.
Jointly with FinCom, that.
Rather than just
that
doing
ought
it
to be a
randomly,
discussion.
do it as a result of a well-thought-out policy, but that,
That's the only reason I bring it up.
I agree with you.
Approach it from a policy standpoint. I mean, we've had an unofficial policy that we change horses for, consulting engineers. We don't
Right.
go out to bid every year, but we do go out every few years. So
Okay,
it's certainly a legitimate
yeah,
policy.
thank you for bringing that up,
discussion.
Chuck.
Yeah.
All right. Keith?
Maybe we won't discuss it at the meeting with.
Well, yeah, we'll wait till they
auditors
leave,
there.
or,
Oh,
Yeah,
thanks, Dick, we'll see you. Okay, and then, what else? We had the debt exclusion stabilization, and that is going to be that's where we actually reduce the tax rate
Right.
from what it would have been, and that'll be important to continue. Blended Community Preservation Fund, we're now in our 4th year in a row of fully funding, so I think we ought to look at whether we can do that. There is, the Senate version of the state budget actually proposes an increase in the CPA local, state match, rather, by establishing fees that may or may not get through the House and the Conference Committee. It may, and even if it passes, it may or may not get vetoed by the governor, but it's out there as a possibility.
I would suggest we add to this list of long-term financial policy, funding the open space stabilization
Okay.
fund there, finding a way to do that.
If we're gonna be funding things, I wanna just, again,
Yeah,
put it out there, get it on our radar. If in fact we do have a dispensary for recreational marijuana
Right.
that comes in and we're able to collect 3% from them.
Yep.
It's an opportunity for us, whether it be the space needs, if we're gonna have to relocate town hall. something like
Dedicate a
that, we can
revenue
start
stream or
dedi-
something, yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
Start socking some money away.
Yeah.
So that we can act upon a senior center.
Good idea.
A new town hall, that kind of thing. So it's,
And for the fall town
Keep that
meeting, we'll be
full.
looking at adopting the 3% sales tax for, it's a local option, sales tax for.
the people are waiting on that, I already got from an attorney I know who represents some of these folks, like, did you guys pass your bylaw? They'll monitor it, it's like, oh,
Yeah.
yeah, it's like, oh, yeah, they'll be in soon.
yeah, they got a whiteboard, they're all
Yeah,
keeping
yeah.
score.
Yeah.
They got the big map of the 351.
Okay. Going around the board on those last topics, if we didn't cover any of the ground for financial policies, or any stray topics that you've brought up that don't fit in neatly here. Joe, is anything else you had that you'd mentioned, or that have come to you since then?
We talked about it briefly, but going back to what's called West Littleton or Littleton Depot and some areas that get overlooked, in my opinion, sometimes. There's parcels of land down there, one parcel in the middle, in between Howard Avenue and Taylor Street, that's zoned differently than those two streets. And it was zoned that way in 1953 because Sandville had concrete trucks, so it was industrial B. So a thought that I have is that from the railroad tracks down to Beaver Brook, maybe should be, looked to be rezoned and not have it industrial B, because
On which road, Taylor Street?
you have Taylor Street and you have Howard Avenue.
Oh, both, okay.
Right. In between
strip.
that strip is
Yeah, yeah.
industrial B, and you have business on this side, and even on Howard Avenue, that's a business district.
I didn't realize that, yeah.
Part way down. But this is something to look at, so probably not in my lifetime, but in the future, maybe that area could become something else than what it is right now.
You talked to anybody in the planning board about that? or?
We, maybe 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah.
I talked to one of the landowners who didn't want any change at all, but the problem is industrial B, you can have external storage So there's the possibility of people could just store things out there, and that area will never be attractive. And then there's small things like, you take a look at the Porter Road Bridge, that's a historic
Yes, yeah.
thing. I haven't been down there recently, but when I went down, I think, last year, when I went down to take a look at it, it was just all overgrown.
That's a shame, yeah.
As opposed to when we had the 250th anniversary, there was a
Focal point,
It was a ceremony. This time we had the 300th anniversary, and no one even paid attention to it.
Yeah. I remember I included that with on the master plan committee back when PJ was chairing it, and I went around and took photos of various things in Littleton, things I thought were relatively significant that I figured we wouldn't even know, because that was one of, nobody knew what it was. It's like, what is this? Where is it? What is, you know, whatever. So I share your thoughts on that. Cindy?
Nothing else to add.
Okay, great. Chuck?
I got just a couple things to throw out there.
Yeah.
Just anytime we have, I think each of us has gone to Steve and said, what's the tax impact? What's this gonna mean to the taxpayer if we do X or Y?
Right, right.
If we can get that information so that we can distribute it.
Right,
Because we'll go to Steve and get it, but it's not necessarily being disseminated as much as it could be. So the tax impact on taxpayers for any large projects that we propose or we're looking to do, just so that we can get that information out there. So some sort of reporting structure back to us on something like that. Obviously, work with the legislators and also other communities for more equitable distribution of state resources. If we can collaborate with some of our surrounding communities to better utilize state resources. In talking to some other communities, they can't believe the amount of free cash that we have. So when you're talking about financial policies with the folks that you're talking about, the review, is there such thing as too much free cash? I don't know the answer, but just to bring up that question. And then we've got such a great story to tell when it comes to fiscal responsibility and
Yeah.
fiscal policies and whatnot. We should be looking at going for a GFOA award. There's different types of awards that we can go after. And, with Munis coming online, it's going to be so much easier for a lot of the reporting, and like you said, Open Checkbook, Andover, Concord, Cambridge are some of the communities that I've spoken with that have gotten awards. You keep talking about performance measures.
Right.
Cambridge specifically got an award for performance
do they?
measures. Yeah.
Oh, we didn't come across that one in our
Yeah.
research. Well, some of those items specifically, Chuck, sound like they're in the bailiwick of the financial policies group. If you wouldn't mind just sending an email along, to me and Keith, whatever, so we can make sure those ideas don't get lost in the agenda for that. And, you can come along, come to the meeting.
Have to post. There's three of us that we have to post.
Well, we'd be posting it anyways. We do that for the financial policies, don't we, Keith?
Yeah, it's a posted
Yeah,
meeting.
so you would come as a guest, you wouldn't, we were
Working
all around the
group
room.
is
Yeah.
specifically constituted as a,
But I just think we have such a good story to tell.
Oh,
We
I
should- we should
agree.
be
And I
singing
agree
from
with
the
some of your other
rooftops,
points.
And we should be going
Yeah,
after
we
some of these
should, yeah.
awards that are.
And I agree with your earlier point too. I've always been a little suspicious of that the free cash. It's like, all right, if we didn't have any, that would be a problem, if we weren't doing it right. But this, it's like years ago, I used to complain that we were much too conservative on our, revenue estimates. And that's kind of you don't want to be wrong in the other direction, but
Yeah.
if you're too conservative, you can be just as, and I don't think that's the case now, but I think once upon a time, we had unrealistically low, growth numbers, and we ended up with, surpluses. Prior administrations, Keith, but,
Yeah, no.
right. Okay. Realizing where we're at, let me suggest the following by way of observation, and then I'll ask the question of board members. As I went through the policies, things fell into one of three categories. Either areas where I saw something that was either directly related to a change we were already talking about that would require a change in a policy or procedure and was duly noted. A lot of things, and I made, I didn't even get halfway through the book on that. A lot of things that just struck my eye is like, oh, that looks like it's time sensitive. Have these been updated? And there are tons of things in there.
Right, that's what I
Fee
picked up on.
schedules,
Right.
things that reference state laws that may have changed, a lot of that stuff.
Right.
And then there was a third category of things that when I read it, I just didn't understand what the rationale was behind it, and they were, so I think, for my purposes even, I'd kind of want to go through this section by section and and stop and answer some of those questions. But let me start by saying, this isn't accusatory, Keith, just as a matter of practice. When was the last time a lot of these things have been reviewed for their,
There's been no comprehensive review of the entire document.
okay,
To say, okay, I mean, we've made a cursory attempt over time to, if there are glaring errors with a policy, we've,
but a lot of them are department-specific. So say, for instance, you got I apologize for interrupting, but, you got like a list of like where all the stop signs are. Okay. Is this still true? I don't know.
Yes, that one, we actually updated several years ago by
Okay.
going through it with the town clerk specifically, because the policy didn't actually say where they all were, so we went and found them and documented them.
I can get
Put it-
specific as we roll through, but when I noticed that the headline for one is Chapter 7 Town Littleton Highway Department, well, we don't call it the Highway Department anymore, it's Department of Public Works, so I'm wondering whether the,
Still call it the highway
well,
department.
I would too, I mean, because,
Except it's headed by a director of public works.
right, well, but it just suggests to me that it's been a while since somebody looked through that, and, are all these things
Yeah,
still?
there's some things like we know.
These fee tape, I mean, I wouldn't blame Chris if he never knew it was his responsibility to go through and update the fee tables in here, but somebody's gotta, otherwise, what's the point of having them, right, And on, and then, I don't know, I just see these OPEB portfolio allocation targets, I mean, should they even be in here? Doesn't that
Yeah,
stuff
was-
change?
We actually, that's part of a policy that we have adopted in the last 5 years anyway.
These actual, so many go to domestic equity, so many get to, really, that's an adopted policy, shit, I mean, I don't wonder.
If it wasn't adopted, it wouldn't be in that book, so.
Well, all right, that's an answer, I guess, so there's that kind of stuff. I don't know, did the board members, I mean, is it any individual member's discretion to how deep a dive you wanted to make into this, but,
So,
yes.
going back to school committee, we had a policy subcommittee.
Right.
And there were two members of the board, the school committee that would review policies. And
Oh, I see where this is going.
it kind of got done, but it kind of didn't get done. Then Darrell Baker came along.
Ah,
And Darrell was a watchdog on the policies.
Yeah.
And he had a system, and on Sunday mornings, he grabbed his coffee and he grabbed the policies, and he would knock out just a couple of policies every Sunday morning. And he was a godsend as far as the
Yeah.
school committee's policies concerned. And there was some stuff that was glaring. And he combined some, and I would say for 3 years, we were either amending, adopting, deleting.
so you suggesting we do this over time with
I-
the subcommittee
I
working
think
on
that
it?
what we need to do is we need to start tracking which I think we've been doing. When we say we need to review that policy, Keith's making note of it, and we're
Right.
bringing it back up now. And beyond that, maybe we should start some sort of a process where,
I mean, I don't mind volunteering myself with somebody else to go through. I'd like to take a good full whack at a lot of this, because anytime you have something that's out of date or no longer valid, it just reduces the credibility of the rest of the document.
I don't disagree with you. I think from a first whack at it, it might be something that would be almost like the first hour and a half of a retreat.
Right.
Would be dedicated to the guys, let's read through this, because it's
But
not an easy.
There's some things in here
Undertaking.
that, obedience to stop signs, and it says like, it's probably against the law, but if you line up 3 cars and they all stop, 3 cars can take off without coming to a stop.
State law used to provide that, yeah.
And then we talk about rail cars.
Or using your horn for any other reason other than an emergency? What if I'm driving by Chuck in traffic, toot my horn, oh, what am I?
Right.
And then what's the,
It's an emergency, I need to say hi to Chuck.
We have angle parking at the common. There's all kinds of outdated.
It says the
I don't know, there's no consistency, there's a level of detail in some areas, and then it's just broad in others, which, I don't know. Yeah, I'm sorry, Cindy, what were you
Now,
gonna say?
I mean, do the fire explorers deliver the town report to each home?
No?
So, that's one thing I was like,
Oh,
wow.
Fay Park, we're supposed to vote every time somebody uses Fay Park. Well,
Well, that's certain, that one is clearly one that should be rescinded, because the Fay Park's under the Park and Rec Commissioners, and it was transferred to them, and they've adopted their own policies at least 8 or 9 years
okay,
ago.
all right, so there's a lot, but I wonder, maybe before even, I would ask perhaps that we send those parts that are governed by a specific department back to the department and say, can you look this over and see what's up to date, not up to date? So that, I mean, that's police, fire, highways, part of it, finances, part of it too, and whatever else you think is appropriate, Keith.
Sure.
But,
I'd be happy to do that.
so before we close the book on that topic, I mean, does that sound like and then I would,
Good starting point.
yeah, and I'd like to, I like the idea of taking it in chunks, but I also like the idea of somebody being accountable for it, and I don't mind being a part of that with somebody, so if somebody else wants to volunteer, you have any interest in that, or?
I'm done with it.
What's
Okay.
Darrell doing on Sundays?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so we're
There
gonna
you
go to
go.
Baker's house. We bring the coffee, we go to Daryl's house.
So I went through the whole report, so I'll type up my notes.
Oh, sure, yeah, I don't want to
Share them with
preclude
you.
any work that people have already done, I did
Yeah,
some
no,
myself,
I'll-
too.
Cindy, if you wanna jump in on Sunday mornings with Daryl and Paul, I can step back.
And I noted the, the by page number, so I'll share
So
that
did-
with you.
Yeah, I
what
did some of that
picked
too,
up on.
yeah, by page, but maybe even before we get it, some of the stuff will go away when we have the departments review.
Right.
Yeah, we'll have the departments review the policy.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right,
And the only thing that I wanted to note, I put a memo into the agenda item for the bylaw review, and
Yep.
it covered two categories. One is sort of where we needed to amend regulations to properly reference Bonnie's current job title and Anthony's current job title, and
Oh.
a number of individual policies. Those are housekeeping changes. And then there were two substantive policies that I just want to put on your
the
radar
liquor
screen.
license one here?
Yeah, one was, and it just so happened because we got a report on compliance.
Right. Yeah, 5
compliance
violations
checks.
too, right?
Compliance checks, and I compared ABCC guidelines for compliance checks with what our written policy says.
Yeah.
And we're off.
Right.
I mean, we have to, it's a different scale, it's a different standard for, sales to an underage person is one thing, but a compliance check where you're using a police agent to, as an educational thing, different scale. So we need to amend our policy, so it says like 30 days for the first offense, that, you could.
Would you want to agenda those for
Yeah,
our
so we-
next meeting?
Yeah, so we should have that for a future meeting, and the other one was, since we had talked about the need to do the performance reviews, that there was a Supreme Judicial Court case about a month ago, which just changed some rulings on, for those multiple boards where all the members do reviews, that there's a different standard now for how you do a composite
Oh,
review.
I saw a story on
And some-
that.
And so we wanted to make sure it was up-to-date guidance in that document, in
Right.
that guidance document. So council has, in the agenda packet, are memos from council
Yep.
and suggested language for both of those policies that I
Okay.
just mentioned.
As far as scheduling goes, maybe then, since there's going to be a little bit of time needed for the department heads to do their review, when that's been done, maybe Chuck and I can get that information from you and begin that process. But as far as the goals go, I'd like to revisit that sooner rather than later, because we did,
I'd say you'd have time, as far as I can see, you'd have time on the meeting on June 25th. to
25th,
deal with
fine.
the goals.
Okay, and
And you could
I
do the
promised
regulations.
Chase, have a chance to, get input on that
So the
too.
regulations, I'd suggest we do in July. I mean, the next discussion on the regulations.
As
is-
long as the departments, do their part between
Yeah,
now and then.
Yeah, we'll have,
Okay.
next Monday night is a full agenda.
Yep.
We've got the library coming in, the Conservation Commission for the discussion about Cloverdale. Remember that we have a site inspection this Thursday of Cloverdale and the Newtown tax title property. We're going to do the Newtown first, 5:30, 6 o'clock, Cloverdale, that's a better time for the Conservation Commission.
Okay, good.
So we'll post I've shared with the chair drafted,
On Cloverdale, are we gonna be,
post that tomorrow.
are we gonna have like a roadmap out of the spot we were in last time, or is it still gonna be just dumped on the table when, are we still where we were, or?
We're still where we were. Yeah,
Okay,
that
all right.
your discussion on next Monday night
Yeah.
is the continuation of the Cloverdale, for which you wanted to have a site inspection.
Right, which we're doing
So I guess
Thursday.
the opportunity on Thursday night is to have a,
While wandering along the thickets, we can work out
have an
a,
aha moment and say, aha, well, you put it there instead of there.
okay, all right. So, so our next meeting is actually Thursday.
Yeah, it's not, it's a site, we're posting it as an on-site inspection, but we do want to post it tomorrow.
Yeah, and we're starting at
At
Newtown Road.
At 5:30 at Newtown Road, 6 o'clock at Cloverdale. And then we'll post the agenda for your meeting next Monday night,
Right,
and the next day or two, shared with the chair of the draft, so
Yep.
we'll be all set soon,
okay, and we'll continue the goals discussion on the 25th.
on the 25th.
Perfect. Our audience members, anything further on goals? No, thank you for coming.
As far as on Thursday evening, probably good idea to wear work boots or, wellies or, I wouldn't necessarily
Yeah,
show up in a
especially
suit.
Proposing a dress code, should that be a policy?
No, I don't think it's necessarily a dress code, but heels might be a challenge.
Yeah.
No high heels,
I've
right?
Right,
been a
right.
couple times. I don't know that I'm gonna be able to make it back in time.
Okay.
For either of those site visits. I've been to
Right.
both sites. But I hope to be able to make it back for the
Okay.
Cloverdale because looking at the map and for me to try to visualize where the boardwalks are going and all that kind of thing.
Yeah, I hope you are able to make that, because at least that one, I mean, the other one, if you've already been up to there, then it's probably self-evident to you. I haven't been there in a while, so I don't know. Okay, consider this a good night's work.
It was good.
Motion to adjourn?
I think it was good.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Then I'd love a motion,
To adjourn?
yeah.
So moved.
Second?
Motion's made and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? The ayes have it.
Good night, folks.